Hey guys, OGalbina here, and today we have another tier list video. Today we're going to be going over each and every one of the fully evolved fairy type or usable fairy types. There are some NFEs, the first one's actually an NFE, that are usable in the Draft League format, letting you guys know which I think is the best and, you know, kind of my rankings of all of them, kind of based on their price point, the value that they offer, and different things like that. Obviously, Mega Diancie is better than Wigglytuff, but maybe I think Mega Diancie is hella overrated and it's C tier, but I think Wigglytuff is really underrated, so I put it in B tier. That's not what I'm putting, so don't worry. But kind of keep that in mind as we rank these, and yeah, if you guys do enjoy today's video, be sure to drop a like as well as sub to the channel. At the time of me recording, we are at 910 subscribers. We are so close to 1,000, and I would really appreciate if you help me out along getting that goal. If we hit 1,000 before Scarlet and Violet, I am going to be doing a Scarlet and Violet giveaway with either 1 or 2 copies of the game, depending on how broke I am at the time. So definitely drop a sub if you want to be entered into that. And yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into it. Now, a little quick preamble before we jump in. Something that you'll probably notice is this is going to be probably much shorter than our other tier list videos. There's not that many fully evolved fairy types in the game, especially considering that this is one of the most important typings in the game. It's often very important to grab a good fairy early, as it offers a ton of very key resistances, and they usually offer a ton of great utility as well. So making sure that we know which fairies are good, which fairies kind of fulfill the role of being a fairy type for most drafts is really important. So this will be a pretty good video for you guys. But yeah, that being said, let's jump in. First up, we have Clefairy, which is typically a very low point Pokemon, maybe 4, 5 points, something down there. But despite that, I'm actually going to put it in C tier. C tier for Clefairy. It's a really solid Pokemon for its price point. Now, it's not the bulkiest thing in the world, but in conjunction with Eviolite, it can be really, really obnoxious to deal with. It still has the same, all of the annoying utility coverage options and, you know, nuisance things that Clefable does, but just at a much lower price point for a little bit more bulk, and a little bit more passivity, I suppose. The only big downside to Clefairy, in my opinion, is having a fairy type that can't switch into the move knockoff very comfortably. Obviously, we don't want to lose our Eviolite, because then we might even die to like random coverage and things like that, and we're just not going to be the same bulky, annoying pivot that we, you know, are kind of supposed to be with this Pokemon. So I think that's a big downside, but if you have good knock resistance, good offensive dark checks, that you don't need your fairy to do so. I've drafted Clefairy a million times, and I think it's actually incredibly solid. So very good Pokemon here in C tier. Now, we can talk about its evolution. If Clefairy's in C tier, all the way down there, we're obviously going to put Clefable up here in S tier. Phenomenal Pokemon. Jack of all trades, master of none, but, you know, can do so many different things so well. We can set up with Calm Mind and Cosmic Power. We can set up rocks. We can spread status with T-Wave and Toxic. We can Wish. We can Protect, or we can Soft Boil and things like that. We have phenomenal Gem 1 coverage. We can be Life Orb plus Magic Guard. We can be Unaware in order to kind of bypass our opponent's boost and not have to worry about getting swept through by DDXmon or whatever it might be. This thing offers so much to a team. It's insane. I actually have not used it myself, but even without using it, I can kind of tell you, you know, how good it is. And I'm sure you guys all know how good, what do you call it is, Clefable. Okay. Next up, we have Alolan Ninetales. I'm going to go ahead and put Alolan Ninetales in C tier. I think the idea of webs and the prep, or webs, Veil, that it, and like the idea of them and the prep that it forces is very solid. I think some matchups Alolan Ninetales can be very annoying, spamming Blizzard and Moonblast and all that stuff. But I do think it kind of falls flat a little bit. I'm not the biggest on like Veil Hyper Offense personally. It's not the worst thing in the world, but if it's your playstyle, it's a good mon for that, obviously. Getting both screens at the same time is great. It could be a great hail setter if you do end up having something like maybe an Arctozolt or something like that to abuse the hail, which can be really, really cool. My big issue with Alolan Ninetales is it's very frail for a fairy type, so it's not going to fill that defensive fairy role that you're really going to want it to fill. It's really just hard stuffed by steel types, which is really annoying in a format where steals are kind of very, very prevalent. Now, obviously, most steals don't have reliable recovery, so I suppose you can chip them down the sense that you're throwing off Blizzard. You have a Spike up, and you got Hail up because you're Snow Warning and things like that. That could potentially be obnoxious, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. You can kind of push past a lot of those Pokemon, but it's also just not the strongest Pokemon in the world. Its base special attack is just kind of lacking for me in a lot of instances. Hold on, let me pull up a separate team builder over here so I can actually like look at the stats while I talk about them. Probably a good idea. Only 81 special attack, which if you think about it, is really fucking weak. So I'm not the biggest on Alolan Ninetales personally. I understand the value in it, and it's not the worst Pokemon in the world, but it's definitely not great. Yeah, next up we have Wigglytuff, and I'm gonna put Wigglytuff in D tier. And it's not that I think Wigglytuff is awful or I think it's undraftable. I've actually drafted it before and it's given me good value out of the price point that it's at. But I think putting in the same tier as Clefairy when they're typically near or around the same price is pretty tough. It's a fairy type that doesn't resist fighting, which is a little bit annoying in a lot of instances. It's a good Dragapult check. It's a really good Dragapult check, which is really funny. It gets competitive too, so I guess you can kind of deter Intim or Defog, I guess. But at the end of the day, you're still a Wigglytuff, so how much is your opponent going to be terrified of that? That's great coverage. Sorry, it has a meaty HP stat to pass really fat wishes, but other than that, it kind of just lacks in other areas. It's very slow. It's not the bulkiest thing in the world. It's got a fat HP stat, but 45 defense, 50 SPDF isn't the best. It's decently strong with, what, 85 special attack? The fact that this thing has more special attack than Alolan Ninetales is so funny. Alolan Ninetales sucks. I'm only objectively putting it in C tier because I feel like it, like, has to be there. I think that one sucks. I'll never draft that thing. But yeah, it's an okay low, like, really bottom tier fairy. And if you're really in a tough spot and you need that defensive fairy opposed to, you know, getting a more offensive one or whatever it may be, I think it's completely fine to draft this thing in D tier. But it's probably actually even at the top of D tier in my opinion, or close to it. I will say something that I'm kind of noticing, and I've always kind of thought, and I'm kind of just like putting it to words now, is the idea that a lot of the top tier fairies are amazing. But then once we get past like the top tier fairies, the ones that are really high priced and really sought after, a lot of these Pokemon suck. I don't know. I wish they made a lot of the fairy types better, because fairy is obviously a very valuable type. It's an incredible typing. So we'll see. Because I'm looking at the next two and the next three, and I don't like these. The next four, I don't like these Pokemon at all. So we'll jump into them. We'll go over them quick. Alolan Rapidash, Galarian Rapidash. It's barely a fairy type. It's okay offensively, I suppose. Base 105 speed, I believe, just like regular Rapidash. Yeah. 100 attack, so it's okay. It can sword stance, has good coverage even, in like high horsepower. Okay, you go special with 80 base special attack with cool coverage there as well. But yeah, it's not gonna form that defensive role that you're really gonna need a fairy to do. It's weak to knock. It's not weak to knock. It's kind of weak to knock because it's a Rapidash bulk wise, but it's neutral to knock, which is always really, really tough as well to kind of justify. So it's going to be down here in D tier. It's not that good. I'm going to have a hot take, and I know a lot of people really like this Pokemon, and hopefully you guys all yell at me in the comments about it because that just pushes me in the algorithm. But Galarian Weezing fucking sucks. Where is it? We're going to put it in D tier. I'm going to put it above. It'll probably be at the top of D tier, but I'm going to put it in here. It sucks too, because I love the idea and the concept of this Pokemon. I really do. It's a great Fizz-Def wall, especially with the Poison Fairy type being a 4x resist to fighting, being a good knock switch. It checks a lot of offensive fighting very well. It has 3 great abilities in Levitate, Neutralizing Gas, and Misty Surge, which can all have great utility and things like that. It has Fire coverage plus Poison and Fairy, which typically you'd think would make this thing decently strong or not super passive. But then you use this Pokemon in practice, and I really don't know how to explain it other than I've used this thing a million times and seen it used a million times. It just falls flat and just tends to be so passive and allows such free offensive momentum for your opponent. You're not the strongest thing in the world, even with your good offensive coverage. You have no reliable recovery, so even while you're switching and taking knocks well, getting knocked off is honestly pretty detrimental in a lot of instances. And if you can't status something or put something on a timer with a Toxic or a Will-O-Wisp, you're not really doing much to them, and you're kind of sucking that momentum as that Steel type comes in and, you know, sits in front of you forever. Even if you're Flamethrower and you're doing 30%, they're probably fine. I don't know. I'm just really not a big fan of G-Weez. I feel like it saps so much offensive momentum, and that might be just a playstyle thing. It's for a Pokemon that saps as much momentum as it does, to not have reliable recovery as well is really tough for me to kind of justify. So I think D tier is just about fine for it. Next up, we have Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime will go in D tier as well. Jeez, these Pokemon are all terrible. Yeah, Mime is a Pokemon. It's fast. It can do some shenanigans with, like, Encore. It can set up screens. It can BP around and things like that. If your illegal allows Baton Pass, it could be cool because it's soundproof, so that's a cool option, I suppose. It has base 90 speed, good meaty SPDF stat as well. Maybe, like, with an AV, it can do some work, but at the end of the day, it's a Mr. Mime, and it's not that good of a Pokemon. I don't know. Decently strong base 100. Maybe I'm sleeping on this thing a little too much, but it can't really touch steals. Oh no, I got Mystical Fire this gen. Maybe I'm tripping. And it has Focus Blast too. So maybe it is a little bit better than I'm giving it credit for, but I'm not the biggest on Mr. Mime, and I actually have never seen this thing drafted. So maybe someone needs to prove me wrong and draft it, because I actually could see some potential out of this thing looking at its move pool right now. I could see someone using well, but I have quite literally never seen it drafted. Okay, don't worry, I have another D tier fairy, but the next couple, I'm looking ahead, my eyes are actually pretty good. So we'll get out of this bottom tier area right here, right now, in a couple seconds here. Next up, we have Togetic, which I know a lot of people really like Togetic because it's really fucking bulky with a Eviolite, but I think this thing I think it's bad. I'll be honest. I'll put it right here above Mr. Mime just because I have no reference point of Mr. Mime. It could be terrible. It could be great. But I've drafted Togetic a couple times. I'm not the biggest on it since I guess it's very bulky, but again, it's very passive. It's weak to rocks and can't avoid them via heavy-duty boots or anything like that. It's another fairy type that's supposed to check offensive fighting, presumably, if you're drafting as that 4 types fighting resist. That can't take a knockoff. Okay, rocks are up. You get knocked off. And it's like a life orb fighting type or something like that, and it just nukes you the next turn with a poison jab or thunder punch, ice punch, whatever it might be. So I think it kind of defeats the purpose of it being that bulky Eviolite fairy to switch into fighting. So if you can't switch into fighting, they have knockoff, which most of them end up having. So I'm personally not very big on Togetic. I understand why some people like it. I just think it's much too passive for my personal liking. Just kind of a theme with a lot of these bottom tier fairies and things like that, at least personally. Okay, good fairy time. We're gonna go ahead. Compared to the other fairies, I think it has to go in A tier. We're gonna go ahead and put Azumarill in A tier here. Now, Azumarill isn't your stereotypical bulky fairy, but water fairy is a very good defensive typing. This thing is phenomenal offensively, obviously with huge power, whether it be Choice Band, Belly Drum, Assault Vest Azumarill, I think is a really, really good set. It's probably my favorite Azumarill set to run. Whenever I use this thing, I always spam AV. I really think it's great. It has good coverage in priority in Aqua Jet. It can Ice Punch, Play Rough, Superpower, liquidation, a bunch of things, and be really, really strong. But it also has good defensive utility with abilities like Sap Sipper and Thick Fat. You can Whirlpool Parashong things and trap things in and win that way, which is something that people always have to account for in prep. If not, they're going to lose a very important Pokemon or two to this thing potentially. So that's a really cool option. It's overall a very, very solid Pokemon. I think it's a little bit more offensively inclined, but I think like AV Azumarill is a good kind of like midway point to still get the defensive utility fairy sometimes with proper wish support and things like that, while still having, you know, that strong offensive Pokemon that Azumarill really can be. So I think A tier is completely fine. Next up, we got Granbull. We're already zooming through. There's a lot more fairy types early gen than there's later gen. Goodness. We're going to go ahead and put Granbull in C tier. I'm going to actually go ahead and put it at the top of C tier right now. Actually, yeah. We're going to put it right here. I'm going to put Alolan Ninetales at the bottom of C tier, I'll be honest, because I like Clefairy more. But Granbull, very solid Pokemon, good Intim Pivot, very strong offensive too. I think it's base 125 special or physical attack, which is great alongside its coverage. Intim as a great pivot, like Rocky Helmet, Breast Talk Granbull is a staple on so many NatDex teams, so many Gen 7, Gen 6 teams to check those offensive fightings. So it does lack that reliable recovery, but we can Rest Talk up. It's great with an AV because it has phenomenal coverage with Fairy plus fire and ground and fighting and ice and all this cool stuff, even electric, I suppose, and you know, things like that. So it'll be very solid in that instance as like that offensive tank mon that pivots in and does a lot of damage. It can also be Rest Talk Rocky Helmet and a bunch of cool things. I've even seen Choice Band Granbull put in work. I've seen Heal Bell Granbull put in work as it does get access to that move as well. So while it can't like wish up like many stereotypical fairies, it can pass Heal Bells and, you know, be a decent cleric at the very least. So I think Granbull is worth a C tier pick. I think it's a very, very solid Pokemon. Okay, next up we have Gardevoir. I'm gonna put Gardevoir in B tier. For a similar reason where I don't have like Azumarill A tier, because I think it really struggles as a defensive fairy, but offensively Gardevoir can be absolutely amazing. Whether it be Scarf, Specs, Life Orb, Calm Mind, whatever it might be, Gardevoir is very, very hard to switch into with that base 125 special attack. It has 115 speed F too, which is very, very meaty. 80 speed tier is a little bit mediocre, but you can kind of make up for it with the Scarf. And you have good utility moves like Destiny Bond and Encore and Will-O-Wisp and Trick and things like that you can kind of use to your advantage. You have great coverage. You have great ways of hitting bulky steals in, or like a solid way of hitting bulky steals in Focus Blast, which is very, very nice. And Mystical Fire as well, this gen, which is a really cool tool that I got as well that's 100% accurate and kind of really helps exacerbate that really fat Spadef stat, which is good. Again, struggles defensively, I think, as a Fizdef Fairy, but has a good ability in Trace as well, which is nice, allowing it to copy the ability of everything that comes in. So Scarf Guard is great against weather teams and, you know, different things like that as well. So, or even regen spam teams and things like that. Pivoting guard, getting off a hit, and then healing it all off because you switch out and get the regen. It's always a really cool thing. So, guard is very, very solid mon for sure. I had a personal training session with a client this morning, and I haven't slept very much, so I'm a little tired. I'm yawning a lot. My bad. I apologize. Okay. Next up, we have Mega Guard. I'm gonna go ahead and put Mega Guard in S tier. This Pokemon I've been dying to draft. I have not used it in like a full serious league, but this thing is regular guard, but with a lot more defensive utility in the sense that you have an even higher Spadef stat. You have a better speed tier in 100, 165 special attack, which is insane, by the way. Like, it's ridiculously strong on top of Pixelate Hyper Voices, and then you have Psychic Stab as well as Mystic Fire and Focus Blast and all the other cool coverage that you get. And then because of the fact that you're a lot faster, you're a lot bulkier, on the Spadef side, things like that, you're a lot stronger, so you don't need a lot of special attack in a lot of instances. You can go a lot more Fizdef with Mega Guard, and especially with Will-O-Wisp and Wish and Protect, you can actually be a little bit better Fizdef wise than you would actually think that it could, just based on the stats alone. So, I think this Pokemon is incredible. It was obviously like the Aura's Goat, like a really, really good one back in the day, but I still think it's very solid. And especially if it gets like the same buffs that it got in PLA, where it got things like Ice Beam, Aura Sphere, and especially Recover, I think this thing will be even better going forward. So, very good mon. Next up is Mawile. I don't really want to touch on regular Mawile very much. I think it's a D tier Pokemon. It gets Intin, so it's a pivot in that sense. It's a Steel type that can rock, which is, I guess, supposed valuable. But it's very frail. It's not very bulky, and it's not very strong. So it's not the best Pokemon, obviously. However, its Mega Evolution is incredible. And I'm going to put this thing at the top of S tier currently. This Pokemon is awesome. Mega Mawile, if you don't know, is a huge power, pure power. It's one of the two that doubles your attack. I just want to make sure I know. Huge power, which essentially doubles its attack stat. So, and it doesn't double the base stat, it doubles the stat of your attack. So say I'm at level 100, I max attack Adamant Mawile. I hit 339 attack before huge power factors in. And again, maybe I'm wrong explaining this, and if I explain this wrong, I apologize. But I'm pretty sure this is how it works. 339 times 2, basically a base 68, 768, or 678 physical attack stat, which is insane. This Pokemon doesn't have defensive counterplay. There are no switch-ins. There are some things that think they can pivot in, but if they catch a stray Focus Punch or Brick Break, they're kind of crying and not having a good time. So, fighting coverage plus Steel and Fairy, which is a phenomenal offensive and defensive typing alongside Fire and Knockoff and Rock Slide and Thunder Punch and Ice Punch and all this crazy stuff, makes this Pokemon really, really hard to deal with defensively. Now, it's balanced in the sense that it has a very bad speed stat, only base 50, but you can invest to outspeed a lot of bulky and fat things. This thing just rips through balance and stall teams, things like that. You can Swords Dance and Sucker Punch as well for priority and kind of pick off those faster stats, which is phenomenal. You have good defensive utility as well. While you're not the bulkiest thing in the world and you probably don't want to use your Mega Mawile defensively, Steel Fairy is a great typing and it's decently naturally bulky. Especially when you consider the fact that pre-Mega you are going to have Intimidate, at least, you know, in some matchups you are. So this thing can be absolutely amazing in so many different matchups. It's a great Pokemon. I love drafting Mega Mawile. I spam this Pokemon. If you guys saw my APA Classic run on the channel, which I need to upload finals of still. I have not uploaded finals yet because Kurt was really going to upload his, so I waited for him, and then he didn't, and then I forgot. So I need to upload that. Remind me in the comments. Or if you guys don't care, just be like, nah, it's good, bro. But it was a great game. It was a really good game. And Mega Mawile was great in that game, as it is in pretty much every game. So it, obviously going to be at the top S tier for me personally. Alright, next up we have another Mega. 3 Megas in a row, and Mega Altaria. A phenomenal Pokemon. I'm put it in A tier. I think it's incredibly versatile. It's very, very bulky as well, which I think is the main thing I really like about Mega Alt. The defensive utility on this thing is out the wazoo. Big 75 HP and then 110 defense, 105 Spadef, which is great. 110 in both of its attack stats, which is phenomenal. Whether you want to be Dragon Dance, whether you want to be special, you can be Agility setup if you're special. You can be Dragon Dance physical. You can be Dragon Dance mixed even. You get great coverage like Earthquake and Fire coverage, which is awesome on top of Pixelate boosted body slams or facades this gen, returns and old gen, things like that, which is great. You can defog, you can Obviously, Roost for reliable recovery. You can Heal Bell. You can Cotton Guard and like Double Dance. Like one of my favorite sets is Cotton Guard, Dragon Dance, Facade, and Roost. It's terrifying to deal with and such a good Pokemon. So I think A tier Altaria is definitely fair. Great Mega. I love using it. Okay, we get a quick break from Mega Pokemon. We can go to Togekiss. We're also going to put Togekiss in Ace. So see, we've had some great fairies. Maybe it's just the early Gen fairies blow. The Gen 1 mons they tried to make better by giving them the fairy type. Who knows? But I think Togekiss is obviously phenomenal. We're using it right now in the BBL. Do I have Togekiss in BBL? I feel like I have Togekiss in BBL. Yeah, I do. I do have Togekiss in BBL. But I've drafted it a million times before. Very solid Spadef set. Can be very solid on the Fizdef side. It's a great offensive fighting check. Can typically check them very well with the Fairy Flying typing. We can Thunder Wave, Air Slash things down. Serene Grace is a ridiculously annoying ability, especially in conjunction with Air Slash and things like that. I'm really hoping it keeps those PLA buffs and gets Moonblast next gen, because that like 60% chance to lower special attack on Togekiss is going to be really, really nice. It can Nasty Plot up, it can Wish, it can Defog, it can Dual Screens, it can do so many different things. It's such a great utility Pokemon. It can Encore as well, which is another really cool option. You can Baton Pass for momentum, and it can drop big flamethrowers as well for great coverage alongside Fairy Flying. So it's an amazing Pokemon. It's probably like one of the first 3 Pokemon you think of when you think bulky fairy. Personally, what I think is Clefable, Togekiss, and Sylveon. And I'm sure you guys are, somewhere near around there too. So, great Pokemon. Phenomenal. Okay, back to the Megas. We're going to go back down to B tier, and this is going to be Mega Audino. Now, I know a lot of people are like, why? It's worse than regular Audino. It has a bad ability. Yes, but I'm kind of ranking this based on the context that you have regular Audino beforehand, and that your league isn't stuck in 2017 and requires you to Mega first turn. Because if that's the case, as they should not do, if that's the case, this Pokemon is phenomenal. I loved it in my MLG run, in the sense that I could stay unmegged, have regen on my Audino, and kind of knock off and Toxic and pivot around, Wish, not have to protect. But then when the time came and I needed bulk, I needed to, Mega Evolve, gain a ton of bulk, and this thing is really damn bulky. It is very tough to take down with base 103 HP and then 126 in both of its defenses. This thing is insane, and it is so hard to deal with and take down. So I really do like Mega Audino. I think it's very solid. It's a very solid fairy type. It's a very solid ghost immunity as well. And just Fizdef or Spadef wall, depending on what you need. Typically Spadef, but whatever you need, Audino can do for you. So great Pokemon. Next up, we have Whimsicott, another great utility machine. It's not the bulkiest thing in the world, but I like it in the sense that Prankster allows you to do some fun things like Prankster Defog and Encore and Leech Seed and Substitute. Sub-Leech to Whimsicott is a demon. This is a great Pokemon overall for, its price point. I think C tier is just about fair for it. And, if you're a creative player, you can, kind of play a little bit aggressively with it and do some really fun things. So we're going to put Whimsy down here. Next up, we got Florges. We're also going to put in C tier. I think I'm going to put it right here. Now, Florges is, really solid, and maybe I'm kind of have some bias from, like, Gen 7 days, Gen 6 days, and things like that, where Florges had access to Hidden Power, because with Hidden Power, and it's pretty high special attack stat, you can actually punish a lot of switches that, typically you would think you could, particularly bulky steals and things like that. But now with Hidden Power Gun, it's a little bit more passive in my opinion, which is pretty tough, but it's still just an absolute monster with Spadef Wall. You get Synthesis as well as Wish, it can Calm Mind Up, it can Defog, it can Toxic things, it can Heal Bell, it can do a bunch of different things. It does what a fairy type does, which I think is really important. So, I think Florges is okay for its price point, personally. I think it's worse this gen, but it's still not a bad Pokemon inherently, Okay, next up, we have our Aromatisse, and Aromatisse is going to go probably at C tier right here. Aromatisse is another Pokemon that can tend to be a little bit passive, in the sense that, like, things can switch into it, due to it not having great coverage and just being, like, basically mono fairy plus, like, T-Bolt potentially and, like, psychic move. So people can switch into it and kind of take advantage of it, but something they can't do is taunt it, which I love. I think Aromaveil is a great ability. Not being taunted on a slow utility Pokemon like Aromatisse is very, very valuable in a lot of matchups. So I have drafted it before because of that. Solid Trick Room setter as well if you have a Trick Room team, even though it can't teleport out. So yeah, it's an okay Trick Room setter, I guess. But yeah, it can just be a little bit passive for my liking, so I try to avoid drafting it, but I'm not going to, like, lose my mind if I do end up picking it up. Next up, We have another solid utility Pokemon in Slurpuff. It can function as that bulky fairy in some matchups if things aren't way too strong. I've used this thing to check Urshifu many times, so I guess that's a good testament with like Rocky Helmet, Draining Kiss. But you could be Wish. My bad. I'm supposed to be awake right now. Thank God I'm awake, right? But you could be that bulky fairy, but you can also be Calm Mind, Con Guard, and set up and win with like an Unburdened Citrus Berry or something like that. Same thing with Belly Drum. You can Belly Drum up and win. You could be a Sticky Web, Sash, Endeavor, or Lead. You can do a lot of things with this Pokemon. It's really annoying to build for, so I think it's, you know, definitely deserving of a C tier pick. Okay, next up, we have our Sylveon. We're going to go ahead and put Sylveon up here in A tier. I'm going to put it right behind Togekiss, but really, depending on the day, these two could flip-flop. But today, I'm going to lean Togekiss. But regardless, Sylveon's an amazing fairy. Pixelate High Voice are very strong. It gets Mystical Fire for coverage. You can Wish, Protect, Calm Mind. Basically, everything you want a fairy to do. And I'm kind of like repeating myself and regurgitating what I like out of fairies and what I think that they should be doing. So I'm not going to continue to harp on those things. But just know it's a very solid Pokemon defensively and offensively. It can Calm Mind, do a lot of fun things. And it's kind of one of those first couple Pokemon you think of when you think of fairy type in Draft League, at least for most people. Okay, the next two Pokemon, we're gonna just jump to the case, or jump right to it. We have a Dedenne and a Carbink. I'm still going to put them above this thing because this thing is just awful. They have cool utility things they can do. Carbink is a good rocker, screen setter. Dedenne is annoying with like status moves and cheek pouch and things like that, but at the end of the day, Carbink is very passive, so it's not very good, and Dedenne is just not very bulky and not very strong, as it's a Pikachu clone, so it's obviously going to be a little bit lower, yeah? Okay, next up we got Klefki. I'm going to put Klefki at the top of B tier. Phenomenal spike setter, screen setter, prankster utility, which is fun, which is great. Even Calm Mind, Iron Defense sets can be really, really obnoxious with like Draining Kiss, Stored Power. I think people kind of sleep on those aspects of Klefki. It spreads T-Waves and Toxics. It just has great overall utility. I really like this Pokemon. Even though spikes aren't as good this gen, it's still, you know, a very solid mon. Okay, next up, we're going to go in B tier. I'm going to put Diancie at the top of C tier, actually. As it's a very solid rocker. It's incredibly bulky and annoying. Moonblast plus Diamond Storm / Power Gem and Earth Power and Mystical Fire is great. It can Heal Bell, it can Stealth Rock, all that stuff. So C tier is fine. But then we have Mega Diancie, who is kind of the same in all those coverage and utility options, but it's fast and strong as hell. Sorry, I needed a drip. I'm talking too much. But yeah, this Pokemon is amazing. It's one of my favorite Pokemon to use in Nat decks. I actually personally enjoy using it more than Mega Mawile. I think Mega Mawile is definitely better. Makes 160 in both of his attack sets. It's insane. So you can go physical, special, mixed. Very, very easy. You can Rock Polish to set up. You can Calm Mind to set up. You're a great rocker. You get Encore, which is a phenomenal tool that this thing got. I got destroyed. It's a video on the channel in SBT, which is a showdown league I play in. I got destroyed in finals by a Protect Encore Mega Diancie, which is really annoying. Speaking of Protect, it's often used too in conjunction with Magic Bounce as aggressive rockers and Steel types and Ground types to try to get up rocks expecting a switch out, but then you Magic Bounce them right back, which can be really, really clutch in a lot of instances. You can even Explode, which is really cool. So, Mega Diancie, amazing Pokemon. Top 2 fairy, in my opinion. Absolutely love that thing. Okay. Next up, we got Prim. I'm going to go ahead and put Prim in A tier. I really, really do enjoy this Pokemon as well. It's a lot like Azumarill in the sense that sometimes it kind of lacks in the bulk department, but it does really, really function well with an AV. It functions well with the specs. I've even seen Scarf Prim do well. Calm Mind is a great option. It gets Flip Turn for momentum, which I thought was a great tool this gen. It got Calm Mind this gen. It got Encore this gen. Draining Kiss, which is a great way of getting pseudo recovery. Rest Talk is great. Rest Talk Rocky Helmet Prim is amazing. It spreads Scald Burns, and it's just an overall very solid Pokemon. Really enjoy drafting Prim. Yeah, I actually really liked it. And what did we have it recently in Pack? Yeah, I really enjoyed using it there. So, good Pokemon. Okay, next up we have Ribombee, which I'm also going to put in C tier. I think I'm gonna put it below Slurpuff actually. It's a web setter. It's not a very good defensive setting. It sets webs. I'm not big on webs. I have it in BBL right now, and it actually won me a game because they got up webs against a team that had really bad removal in ants, or really bad removal in the matchup at the very least. But at the end of the day, I'm still not a big fan of webs. I've talked about it a million times on the channel, so go watch other videos on the channel, and you'll get some more OGalbina hot takes. I think webs suck. But yeah. Okay, next up is Shiinotic, and I actually don't think this Pokemon's terrible. I drafted it back in BBR just because they gave us 0 points for some reason. And it was a great Urshifu Rapid Strike check because my opponent didn't bring Poison Jab because they didn't expect Shiinotic to come. But it's a very annoying Pokemon. Effect Spore plus Spore as a move is a really solid combination. You can Leech Seed and Strength Sap as well, so it could be a really big, genuine nuisance at the bottom. It can typically get overwhelmed defensively. You know, just by strong attacks. It's not the bulkiest thing in the world, being that it's a Shiinotic, but it's still very solid nonetheless. Okay, next up we have Comfey. I'm actually going to put Comfey at the bottom of B tier. I think Comfey is pretty solid in the sense that it gets the Triage Draining Kiss, which is, you know, awesome. Triage Synthesis, which can also be really annoying. It can defog and can Calm Mind. Calm Mind Comfey is obviously very, very annoying, and if you're not sufficiently prepped for it, it can really be obnoxious. If you have a really passive Steel type, like maybe like a Registeel or something like that, you can also get Leech Seeded up on and Calm Mind, Draining Kiss, Leech Seed, and then beat 1v1 that way, depending on what your coverage is or how strong you are. But yeah, it's just an overall great Pokemon. I really like Comfey a lot. Okay, we've gotten to the Tapus, which we are going. Oh no, we have Mimikyu. Damn it, I hate this Pokemon. If you can't tell, I think this Pokemon blows. It actually gets the wonderful honor of being at the bottom of C tier, almost in D tier. I'm not going to put in D tier because I feel like objectively that's not true, but I hate him and don't think he's very good. Mimikyu, I'm not a big fan of it. Without Z-moves this gen, it really lacks that oomph and that one breakthrough power moment. It's not that strong even with the Swords Dance in my opinion. I remember one time, most recent time I played Mimikyu was against Amel in APA Classic, which was a Gen 7 league. He wasn't Z-Mimikyu, and he wasn't Life Orb in that matchup, and I had a Crobat in. I was just like max HP Crobat. He was at +2 with his Mimikyu. He clicked Shadow Sneak and did like 30%. It's just not a very strong Pokemon, which I really don't like on a Pokemon that lacks a lot of defensive utility. It taking what the 1/8 that it takes now when its disguise gets broken makes Sash that's not as good, so you can't get up that double Sword Stance, provided you keep hazards away and things like that, which again, not a big fan of. And it really needs a Life Orb for oomph, and even then, it often just doesn't break through things sufficiently. I don't know. I don't like it very much. I've never been a big Mimikyu guy, and especially in Gen 8, I think the Pokemon blows. Okay, now we can talk about good Pokemon. We're going to talk about the Tapus, right? And I'm going to put 2 Tapus in S tier and 2 Tapus in A tier. I want you to comment down below which Tapus you think I should be putting in which tier. Because I might have a hot take, and I know it kind of depends on the community and the circle and who I'm talking to and things like that. But I think it's, you know, very clear. Okay, so first off, we're going to have Tapu Koko in S tier. I love this Pokemon. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. We just won a championship within BBL a few months ago, whether it be you turning around or Calm Minding up or being Specs or even being Banded or being Boots, being Screens. It's the best, one of the best pivots in the game. It's incredibly annoying. It's very hard to deal with over the course of the game. It's very hard to chip down and force damage onto with how fast it is and how annoying it is with U-turn. I love Tapu Koko. Great Pokemon. And then, actually, I'm not going to put 2 in A tier. I totally lied. I'm going to put Tapu Bulu in B tier. I like Bulu decently enough. It can push past a lot of its checks, like Banded Woodhammer is really strong. I think they just need to give this thing Grassy Glide. If they give this thing Grassy Glide, I would put it in A tier in a heartbeat, and I would love to use it. But a lot of the times, it's really tough justifying drafting Bulu when Ribombee exists, and then I don't know. I'm typically not drafting them because of its grassy terrain, and I feel like Bulu is really lacking a lot of other instances in the sense that it's very slow. That 4 times weakness to poison can be very, very obnoxious. Yeah, grass just isn't the best typing defensively, so Grass Fairy is okay, but it's not the best. So, B tier Bulu. Totally like. So in the comments, actually just tell me where you would put the Tapus. Next up, we have Tapu Lele, and I feel like these two are the ones that are going to cause the most debate. I'm going to put Lele in A tier probably, right here, and I'm going to put Feeny in S tier, all the way up here, ahead of Tapu Koko. We'll talk about Lele first. Lele is very strong. It's not as strong as it was last gen. Last gen, it would have been S tier because it would have been banned. But just that big power nerf really took away a lot of 2-hit KOs or OHKOs from this thing. And it also doesn't have a lot of defensive utility, but it's still really strong. It's still really good. It has a decent speed tier in base 95. It can hit its checks and like Focus Blast and things like that. It can Calm Mind, Iron Defense, or it can just Calm Mind. It could be Scarf, Specs. I've seen Assault Vest do work. It's a very okay Pokemon. Or not very okay. That's not a nice thing to say. It's a very solid Pokemon. I actually really want to draft it in Gen 8 and give it a shot. Maybe I'll end up moving it. Oop. That's the Radical Red document for the boss fights, my bad. But yeah, it's a very, very solid Pokemon for sure. I'm streaming Radical Red on Twitch right now, by the way, so go follow my Twitch in the description below if you want to see me, you know, do hardcore Nuzlocke of that game. I've really been enjoying it. Okay. And then we also have Feeny up in S tier, which is crazy, I know, but I think it's by far the best water fairy type. I love this Pokemon. Its defensive utility is insane, especially if you find ways to keep it healthy, whether it be with like Protect Feeny to gain leftovers back, whether it be with Wish support, whether it be with this thing clicking Draining Kiss, whatever it might be. This Pokemon is incredible and offers so much defensive utility, with obviously Moonblast, Scald, and Surf as like stab options, but you can knock off lefties. You can Calm Mind up, you can Iron Defense up, you can Taunt, you can Nature's Madness, you can Draining Kiss. You can do so many different things with this Pokemon so darn well, and I think it's an absolutely phenomenal Pokemon. I actually really like Taunt Stallbreaker Feeny. I think it's an amazing set. I really love Double Dance. I also love, like, you know, what do you call it, Random Trick, Scarf, and Spec sets, because it's very strong still with like those boosting items, and you know, with like a modest nature, this thing could be very, very tough to beat offensively and defensively. So Feeny, definitely an S tier Pokemon for me. I would even put it with Coco because of the utility that it offers to so many teams. Maybe that might be a personal thing. No, I'm gonna move it down. I think Coco's a little bit better, but I got plenty of you mad when I put it above Coco, probably. Magearna, I'm not going to put Magearna in S tier, even though it would be all the way at the tippy top right here, because it should be banned. Don't allow Magearna in your leagues unless you're playing Goobers, please. Hatterene, oh man, now we go back down to kind of shitty fairies to end it off, which is a little bit lackluster after the Tapus. Hatterene, I'm going to go ahead and put at the bottom of C tier, a new bottom of C tier. It's not terrible. It's solid as like an offensive Trick Room on, like setting it for itself and clicking buttons. Magic Bounce is always a good ability. It has good coverage, but it's very slow. It lacks good defensive utility, and it's just overall not a very valuable Pokemon in my opinion. So I'm not super big on it. Grimmsnarl, I'm going to put at the bottom of B tier. I think I'm actually going to move up Diancie as well. But I'm going to put Grimmsnarl at the bottom of B tier right here, in the sense that I think it's an okay dark type. I think it's not a very good fairy, and what I mean by that is it doesn't give you the key resistances that a lot of fairies really want, particularly fighting, which can be very tough in a lot of instances. Doesn't have reliable recovery, tends to get whittled very, very fast, if that makes any sense. It's a good screen setter. It can be a good ghost resist with like assault vest sets and things like that. It can spread status, it can prankster bulk up sweep. I've used this thing multiple times, so it's not like certified awful, unusable Pokemon, but I'd be lying to you if I said it was like an amazing mon, really good. I love using it. So now, lastly, I don't know what you guys want me to say. I feel bad. This is the last Pokemon. It's kind of lackluster. It's all creamy. I'm gonna go ahead and put it down here. It's got a good Spadef stat, and it can like Calm Mind, Acid Armor, I suppose. It gets Mystical Fire, which is cool. But it's not very bulky. It's very slow, and it's not very strong. So it doesn't really offer anything in particular. So I would not recommend drafting it. I drafted its G-Max form when G-Max leagues were a thing, and getting a move that, you know, heals you when you attack, like G-Max Finale did, was pretty cool. But yeah, that's gonna be the tier list. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you think I'm crazy, if I'm right, if I'm wrong. Let me know, you know, what you would change in the comments below. And again, be sure to sub to the channel. We're on our way to 1,000. I'd really appreciate if you help me out. Alrighty, guys. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.